You think you own me because of this ring? Watch me burn it." The scream tore through the silence of the penthouse suite, echoing off the marble floors. A pregnant woman, hand on her stomach, eyes filled with tears, stares at a man who looks like he's just seen a ghost. Behind him, a woman in a silk robe smirks, holding a glass of champagne. "Don't walk away, Talia. You have nothing without me. You are nothing," he roared, his face twisted in panic. But she didn't turn back. She walked out of the wreckage of her marriage and onto the tarmac where a Gulfstream G650 was waiting. And the man standing at the stairs wasn't just a billionaire. He was her past, and perhaps her only future. Chapter 1. The Facade at the Pierre. The chandelier in the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel didn't just sparkle, it judged. Under the amber glow of 1,000 crystals, New York's elite mingled in a sea of black tie pretension, the air thick with the scent of Le Labo Santal 33 and desperate ambition. Talia Monroe adjusted the waist of her emerald maternity gown. It was a custom Oscar de la Renta, designed to drape elegantly over her 7-month bump. But tonight, the silk felt like a suffocating second skin. She placed a protective hand over her stomach, feeling the baby kick, a rhythmic reminder of the stakes. "Smile, darling," Grant Ellis whispered, his lips brushing her ear. The warmth of his breath sent a chill down her spine. "The photographer from Vanity Fair is at 3 o'clock. Chin up." Grant, the tech mogul darling of Wall Street, looked the part of the doting husband. His tuxedo was bespoke Tom Ford, his smile practiced to perfection. He was the man who had democratized finance, or so the Forbes cover story claimed. To the world, they were the golden couple. To Talia, he was a stranger she shared a bed with. "My feet are swelling, Grant," Talia murmured, keeping her smile fixed for the camera flash. "I need to sit down." "Just 20 more minutes," he hissed through his teeth, waving at a hedge fund manager across the room. "Sterling Voss is rumored to be here tonight. If I can get 5 minutes with him, the Series B funding is secured. Do not ruin this for me, Talia." Sterling Voss. The name carried a weight that silenced rooms. The reclusive billionaire industrialist who owned half the shipping routes in the Atlantic and spent more time building schools in Laos than rubbing elbows on Fifth Avenue. He was a ghost story in their circles, immensely powerful, rarely seen. "I'm going to the suite," Talia said, her voice firm. She wasn't asking. Grant's jaw tightened, a vein pulsing near his temple. "Fine. Take the service elevator if you look tired. Don't let the press see you limping." Talia turned away, blinking back tears that had nothing to do with hormones and everything to do with loneliness. She wove through the crowd, ignoring the sympathetic glances of Fiona Hartley, her oldest friend, and the only person in this room who knew that the Ellis bank accounts were hemorrhaging cash to maintain appearances. Fiona caught her arm near the exit. "T, you okay? Where's Grant?" "Hunting whales," Talia said dryly. "I'm going upstairs to rest. The baby is restless." "Call me if you need an escape vehicle," Fiona joked, though her eyes remained serious. "I have the Range Rover idling out back." Talia took the elevator to the 39th floor, the silence of the lift a blessed relief from the cacophony of the gala. She had a key to the presidential suite, reserved for Grant's private meetings during the event. She just wanted to take off her heels, order room service, and stare at Central Park until the noise in her head stopped. She swiped the keycard. The light turned green. The door swung open silently over the plush carpet. The living area was empty, but the distinct pop of a champagne cork came from the bedroom, followed by a laugh. It wasn't a deep, throaty laugh. It was high, tinkling, and artificial. Talia froze. She knew that laugh. It belonged to Cassandra Price, the 22-year-old brand ambassador for Grant's company, a woman who curated her life on Instagram in shades of beige and gold. "Grant, you're terrible." Cassandra's voice drifted out, slurred with alcohol. "What if the little wifey comes up?" "She won't," came Grant's voice, arrogant and sure. "She's too busy playing the pregnant saint downstairs. Besides, she doesn't have the spine to check on me." Talia felt the blood drain from her face. The baby kicked hard, a physical jolt that snapped her out of her paralysis. She didn't scream, she didn't run. A strange, cold clarity washed over her. She walked to the bedroom doorway. Grant was sitting on the edge of the bed, his tie undone, a glass of Dom Perignon in one hand. Cassandra was draped over the chaise lounge, wearing nothing but Grant's suit jacket. The silence that followed was louder than the gala downstairs. Grant looked up. The glass slipped from his fingers. It hit the floor, shattering, sending amber liquid soaking into the Persian rug. "Talia!" he choked out, scrambling to stand. Cassandra didn't even flinch. She took a sip of her drink, her eyes raking over Talia's stomach with a look of mild distaste. "Well, that was quick." "Get out!" Talia said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a judge passing a death sentence. "Babe, wait, let me explain." Grant stepped forward, hands raised. "I said..." Talia stepped into the room, grabbing a heavy crystal vase from the console table and hurling it at the wall inches from Grant's head. The crash was deafening. "Get out! Both of you!" "You're hysterical," Grant snapped, his shock turning to defensive anger. "Think about the optics, Talia. The press is downstairs." "The optics?" Talia laughed, a raw, broken sound. "You are sleeping with your employee while your wife is carrying your son downstairs. You want to talk about optics, Grant? Let's go downstairs and tell them together." She turned to leave, but Grant grabbed her wrist. His grip was bruising. "You walk out that door, Talia, and you walk out with nothing," he hissed, his face inches from hers. "I have the best lawyers in the city. I'll paint you as mentally unstable. I'll take the baby. You'll be back in Ohio waiting tables before the ink is dry on the divorce papers." Talia looked at the hand gripping her wrist. She looked at the man she had vowed to love 3 years ago. She realized she wasn't looking at a husband. She was looking at a parasite. She yanked her arm free. "Watch me." She turned and walked out. She didn't take the service elevator. She took the main lift. She walked through the lobby, tears streaming down her face, makeup ruined, past the concierge and out onto Fifth Avenue. It was raining. She stood on the curb, shivering, the adrenaline crashing. She had no wallet, no coat, just an evening gown and a broken heart. A black town car idled at the curb. The back window rolled down. A man sat inside. He was in his late 30s, with sharp features softened by the shadows, wearing a charcoal turtleneck and a wool coat. He didn't look like the tech bros inside. He looked like old money and silence. It was Sterling Voss. He didn't say a word. He just opened the door. The interior of Sterling Voss's car smelled of leather and rain. Talia sat huddled in the corner, shivering uncontrollably. She hadn't spoken for 20 minutes. Sterling hadn't asked her where she was going. He had simply told his driver, "Teterboro." Then the estate. "I don't have anywhere to go," Talia finally whispered, the reality setting in. Her phone, her cards, her ID, everything was back in the suite or in her clutch, which she had left on the console table. Sterling looked up from a tablet he was reading. His eyes were a striking, pale grey. "You have somewhere to go tonight, Mrs. Ellis. Or is it Ms. Monroe now?" "I don't know what I am," she admitted, wrapping her arms around her stomach. "How did you know?" "I saw you leave," Sterling said simply. "And I saw Cassandra Price enter the elevator 10 minutes before you." The math wasn't difficult, unfortunately. Grant is a man of predictable vices. Talia looked at him, really looked at him. Sterling Voss was known for being cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless in business. Yet, he had picked up a straggler in the rain. Why do you care? Because Grant Ellis is attempting to secure capital from my firm, Sterling said, closing his tablet. And I don't do business with men who lack integrity. It's a liability. So I'm due diligence? Talia asked, a flash of her old spark returning. Sterling's lips quirked upward, barely a smile. You're a woman in distress who is 8 months pregnant. I'm a billionaire, not a monster. My housekeeper, Marta, will set you up in the guest wing. You can call your people from there. By the time they arrived at Sterling's estate in Westchester, the story had already broken. Talia sat in the guest bedroom, wrapped in a cashmere robe that cost more than her first car, watching the news on her phone. A loaner from Sterling. TMZ had the headline, "Trouble in Paradise. Pregnant Talia Monroe flees Pierre Gala in tears." There were photos of her exiting the hotel, looking distraught. But then, the narrative shifted. An hour later, Grant had posted a statement on Twitter, X. Talia has been struggling with severe prenatal depression and paranoia. We ask for privacy as we navigate this difficult health crisis. I love my wife and am committed to her recovery. Talia threw the phone across the duvet. The bastard! He's controlling the narrative, a voice came from the doorway. It wasn't Sterling. It was Nash Holden. Nash was legendary. He wasn't just a lawyer, he was a crisis architect. He wore a suit that looked like it was cut from midnight, and he held a briefcase like a weapon. "Who are you?" Talia asked, wiping her eyes. "Sterling called me," Nash said, walking in and placing a business card on the nightstand. "I handle complications, and Grant Ellis is about to become a very large complication for you." "He says I'm crazy," Talia said, her voice trembling. "He's going to try to take the baby." Nash sat in the armchair opposite her, crossing his legs. "Grant is over-leveraged. His company, Ellis Stream, is effectively a Ponzi scheme wrapped in a nice UI. He needs the funding from Voss Industries to pay off creditors. He needs you to be the dutiful, stable wife to secure that funding. Without you, he looks volatile. He's not attacking you because he hates you, Talia. He's attacking you because he's drowning." "He threatened me," Talia said. "He said I'd go back to waiting tables." "Grant Ellis is a small man standing on a tall box," Nash said calmly. "I've already pulled his financials. He's been moving marital assets into offshore accounts in the Caymans under Cassandra Price's name. It's clumsy, amateur." Talia felt sick. "He's been planning this." "He's been planning an exit strategy," Nash corrected. "He just didn't expect you to pull the trigger first. Now, here is the situation. You have two choices. You can go back, play the sick wife, and let him secure his funding. He will likely pay you off handsomely to stay quiet." Talia's hand went to her belly. She thought of the smoke, the mirrors, the coldness. "And the second choice?" "You destroy him," Nash said. "We file for divorce in the morning. We freeze the assets. We release a statement contradicting his, but it will be ugly. The press will eat you alive before they digest him. He has bots, he has PR firms, he has the tech genius halo." Talia looked out the window at the dark, sprawling grounds of the Voss estate. She thought about the baby. A boy. She didn't want her son raised by a man who treated people like assets. "I want to leave," Talia said. "I don't want to fight him in the mud. I just want to be safe." Nash nodded. "Sterling thought you might say that. He's flying to London tomorrow for a summit. He has a safe house in Kensington. It's gated, private. You can have the baby there, away from the New York paparazzi. Why is Sterling doing this? You'd have to ask him, Nash said, standing up. But be at Teterboro Airport at 6 a.m. If you're not there, I'll assume you're going back to Grant. The door closed, leaving Talia in the silence of the luxurious room. She didn't sleep. She spent the night staring at the ceiling, mourning the life she thought she had. She cried until she was dry, and then she packed the few things the housekeeper had provided. At 5 a.m., her phone buzzed. It was a text from Fiona. Fiona, he's outside your old apartment. He's screaming at the doorman. He knows you're not there. He's tracking your phone, T. Turn it off. Talia looked at the device. Grant had insisted on the family plan. He had insisted on the Find My feature for safety. She walked to the en-suite bathroom, filled the sink with water, and dropped the phone in. She watched the screen flicker and die. Goodbye, Grant. The dawn was grey and heavy, the sky threatening snow. Teterboro Airport was a hive of activity for the 1%, jets idling like sleeping dragons. Sterling's car pulled up to the private terminal. The Gulfstream GAUFOIR, the pinnacle of long-range private aviation, sat on the tarmac, its engines whining with a high-pitched hum. It was sleek, silver, and looked like freedom. Sterling was standing at the bottom of the air stairs, talking to the pilot. He looked up as Talia exited the car. She was wearing jeans and a sweater Marta had found for her, an oversized wool coat wrapping her frame. She looked tired, but she was standing straight. You came, Sterling said, his breath misting in the cold air. I chose dignity, Talia said. A rare currency these days, Sterling replied. He gestured to the stairs. Nash will handle the legal filing in New York while we are in the air. By the time we land in London, Grant will be served. Just as Talia placed her foot on the first step, a screech of tires tore through the morning quiet. A black Escalade smashed through the security gate, security guards shouting and running after it. The SUV skidded to a halt 50 yards away. Grant Ellis burst out of the driver's seat. He looked manic. His tuxedo shirt from the night before was unbuttoned, his hair wild. Talia! He screamed, sprinting across the tarmac. Sterling's security detail stepped forward, hands moving to their jackets, but Sterling held up a hand. Wait! Talia froze on the stairs. She turned to face him. Grant stopped 20 feet away, panting. You can't do this. You can't leave the country with my son. He's not born yet, Grant, Talia said, her voice surprisingly steady over the whine of the jet engines. And right now, he's with me. I'll sue you for kidnapping, Grant yelled, pointing a shaking finger. I'll destroy you. You think Voss cares about you? He's using you to get to my company. He wants to humiliate me. Talia looked down at her husband. For the first time, she saw him clearly. He wasn't a titan of industry. He was a terrified boy who had broken his toys and was mad that no one would fix them. He didn't have to use me, Grant, Talia called out, the wind whipping her hair. You did that all by yourself. Talia, please. Grant's voice broke, shifting instantly from rage to manipulation. He dropped to his knees on the asphalt. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. Cassandra means nothing. It was stress. I need you. I love you. It was a performance. It was the same performance he gave to investors, to the board, to the press. Sterling stepped up beside Talia. He didn't touch her. He didn't claim her. He just offered a presence, solid, unmoving, real. The engines are ready, Talia, Sterling said quietly. It's your choice. It always was. Talia looked at Grant, kneeling in the oil-stained tarmac, reaching out a hand. Then she looked at the open door of the jet. She thought about the years of gaslighting, the comments about her weight, the way he dismissed her ideas, the loneliness of their marriage. "Get up, Grant," Talia said softly. "You're ruining your suit." She turned her back on him. "Talia! Talia!" She climbed the stairs. She didn't look back. Sterling followed her, and the heavy door of the Gulf Stream hissed shut, sealing out the sound of Grant screaming. Inside, the cabin was a sanctuary of cream leather and silence. Talia collapsed into a seat, her hands shaking. Sterling sat across from her. He poured a glass of water and slid it over. "He's going to come after us," Talia whispered. "Let him try," Sterling said, his eyes hard as flint. "He's playing checkers, Talia, and he just lost his queen." The jet lurched forward, taxiing toward the runway. Talia looked out the window one last time. She saw a small, dark figure on the ground, surrounded by airport security. As the G650 roared down the runway and lifted into the grey sky, piercing through the clouds into the sunlight above, Talia Monroe took her first deep breath in years. She was leaving a millionaire. But as she looked at Sterling, who was already reading a briefing on sustainable energy, she realized she might be flying toward something worth far more than money. She was flying toward the truth. London in November was a study in grey, a stark contrast to the glittering falseness of New York. The safe house wasn't really a house. It was a fortress disguised as a Georgian townhouse in Kensington. High walls, ivy that looked centuries old, and security detail that blended into the shadows. Talia had been there for 3 weeks. She spent her days in the library, a room that smelled of old paper and beeswax, reading books she had meant to read for years, but never had time for in her life, as Mrs. Grant Ellis. In her old life, time was a commodity traded for appearances. Here, time was heavy, slow, and healing. She hadn't seen Sterling since the flight. He had installed her, ensured she had a top-tier obstetrician, Dr. Aris Thorne, a man who treated royalty, and then vanished into the city's financial district. He communicated through handwritten notes left on the breakfast table by Marta. "Try the Earl Grey today. It's better than the coffee." S. Don't read the tabloids. They are fiction writers with deadlines. A.S. But today, the front door opened with a heavy thud, and the sound of confident footsteps echoed in the hallway. Talia looked up from her book as Sterling entered the library. He looked exhausted. His tie was loosened, his eyes shadowed. He held a bottle of vintage red wine in one hand and a carton of milk in the other. "The milk is for you," he said, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "The wine is very necessary for me." "Rough day at the office?" Talia asked, closing her book. She struggled to shift in the armchair, her 8-month belly an anchor. Sterling walked over, set the milk down, and poured himself a glass of wine at the sideboard. "Your husband has been busy." Talia stiffened. "What did he do?" "He filed a motion in New York family court today," Sterling said, taking a long sip. He turned to face her, leaning against the mahogany desk. "He's claiming I kidnapped you. He's claiming I brainwashed a mentally unstable pregnant woman and smuggled her across international lines. He's asking for immediate custody of the unborn child upon birth." Talia felt the air leave her lungs. "Can he do that?" "He can try," Sterling said calmly. "Nash is already filing a counter-motion. We have the footage from the airport, Talia. We have the audio of him screaming at you. We have the medical records from Dr. Thorne proving you are perfectly sane, just stressed. But Grant isn't trying to win in court yet. He's trying to win in the court of public opinion." Sterling pulled a remote from his pocket and turned on the television mounted discreetly in the corner. He muted it immediately, but the image was enough. It was CNN. The headline banner read, Tech mogul's plea. Bring my wife home. On screen, Grant was sitting with a tearful expression, holding a baby shoe. It was a masterclass in manipulation. He's a monster, Talia whispered, nausea rising in her throat. He doesn't care about the baby. He just wants to control me. He wants his asset back, Sterling corrected. He turned the TV off, but he made a mistake. What mistake? He attacked me, Sterling said, his voice dropping an octave. He named me publicly as the predator, keeping you hostage. He poked the bear, Talia, and I have very sharp claws. Sterling walked over to the chair and knelt on one knee, not romantically, but to be at eye level with her. It was the first time he had been this close since the car in New York. I need you to trust me, he said. Grant is going to freeze your assets. He's going to cut off your credit cards. He's going to try to starve you out so you have to crawl back. He already emptied the joint account, Talia admitted, looking down at her hands. I checked this morning. I have $12 to my name. You have $0 to your name, Sterling corrected gently, because I just transferred $5 million into a trust in your name. It's untouchable by U.S. courts. It's a loan, he added quickly, seeing her expression. You can pay me back when you launch your own empire, which I know you will. Talia looked at him, tears pricking her eyes. Why? Why are you doing this? You barely know me. Sterling stood up, walking to the window to look out at the rain-slicked street. For a long moment, he didn't speak. 10 years ago, he said quietly, my sister was married to a man like Grant, charismatic, successful, abusive in ways that don't leave bruises. She tried to leave him 3 times. The 3rd time, she didn't make it to the airport. The silence in the room was heavy. Talia didn't ask what happened. The way Sterling's shoulders tensed told her enough. I couldn't save her, Sterling said, turning back to her. But I saw you standing on that curb outside the Pierre. You had that same look in your eyes, the look of someone realizing they're in a cage. I promised myself I wouldn't just watch this time. Talia reached out, her hand hovering in the air. Sterling took it. His grip was warm, solid. I'm not your sister, Sterling, she said softly. But thank you. No, Sterling said, squeezing her hand before letting go. You're not her. You're stronger. You walked away. Now, we just have to make sure you keep walking. 2 weeks later, the storm hit London. A literal storm, battering the windows with gale-force winds, and a metaphorical one. Talia woke up at 2:40 a.m. with a pain that felt like a knife twisting in her lower back. She gasped, gripping the sheets. It was too early. She was 3 weeks away from her due date. She reached for the buzzer Sterling had installed by her bed, the one that alerted Marta and security. By the time Marta rushed in, Talia was doubled over on the floor. The baby, Talia gasped, sweat beading on her forehead. Something's wrong. The next hour was a blur of sirens and rain. The private ambulance Sterling kept on retainer whisked her to St. Mary's Hospital, to the Lindo Wing, the same place where royals gave birth. It was supposed to be discreet. But Grant Ellis had eyes everywhere. As they wheeled Talia out of the ambulance, shielding her with umbrellas, a flashbulb popped. Then another. Over here, Mrs. Ellis. Is it Sterling's baby? Grant says he loves you. The paparazzi were swarming the entrance like rats. Someone had tipped them off. Get them back! A security guard roared, pushing a camera lens away. Talia was wheeled into the lobby, her face buried in her hands, sobbing from pain and fear. She felt exposed, hunted. Clear the floor, a voice commanded. Sterling was there. He hadn't been in the ambulance, but he was standing in the hospital corridor, wearing a trench coat over pajamas. He looked furious. He marched up to the hospital administrator. "I pay this hospital a considerable endowment annually. If one photo of her inside this building leaks, I will buy this hospital and turn it into a parking lot. Do you understand?" The administrator nodded vigorously. Talia was moved to a private suite. The labor was brutal. It was back labor, intense and unrelenting. For 6 hours, Talia fought through waves of agony, screaming for a husband who wasn't there, and then realizing she didn't want him there. Fiona had flown in 3 days prior, and she held Talia's left hand. But it was Sterling who stood by the window, refusing to leave the room, his back turned to give her privacy, but his presence anchoring the space. "I can't do it," Talia sobbed, as the sun began to rise over London. "I'm too tired, I can't." "You can," Fiona said, wiping Talia's forehead. "You are a warrior, T." "I'm not," Talia cried. "I'm just a trophy wife who broke." Sterling turned from the window. He walked over to the bed. He ignored Fiona. He ignored the doctors. He looked straight at Talia. "Grant thinks you are weak," Sterling said, his voice hard and low. "He thinks you are going to break and come crawling back to him, so he can parade you around like a prize." "Are you going to prove him right?" Talia glared at him through her tears. "Go to hell, Voss." "Good," Sterling smiled grimly. "Use that anger. Push." And she did. At 7:42 a.m., Leo Monroe, was born. He was small, crying lustily, with a tuft of dark hair. The doctor placed him on Talia's chest, and the world stopped. The pain, the paparazzi, Grant, the money, it all dissolved. "Hi," she whispered, touching his tiny hand. "I'm your mum. I'm the one who's going to protect you." Sterling watched from the doorway. He didn't come closer. He looked at the baby with an expression of profound sadness and longing. Then he nodded to Talia and quietly slipped out of the room. An hour later, Fiona came back in with an iPad. She looked pale. "Don't show me," Talia said, nursing Leo. "You have to see it," Fiona said. It's bad, T." Talia took the iPad. It was a live stream from New York. Grant was standing on the steps of the Supreme Court of New York. He was wearing a suit that looked slightly too big, making him look gaunt and sympathetic. He was holding a microphone. "My son was born today," Grant was saying, his voice cracking. "I found out through a tabloid website. My wife is being held in London by a man with infinite resources. I have been denied my right to be a father. I am asking the President of the United States to intervene. Sterling Voss is not a savior. He is a kidnapper, and I will spend every last dime I have to bring my family home." The crowd behind him, paid actors likely, cheered and held up signs that read, "Free Talia and boycott Voss." Talia looked down at her sleeping son. The fear was gone. In its place was a cold, steely resolve. "He wants a war?" Talia whispered. She looked up at Fiona. "Call Nash and get me a makeup artist. If Grant wants to be on TV, let's see how he likes the ratings when I talk." 3 months later, Leo was thriving. He had Talia's eyes, and, thankfully, none of Grant's features. He was a happy baby who loved the sound of rain against the Kensington windows. Talia had changed, too. The softness of her pregnancy was gone, replaced by a lean, sharp elegance. She cut her hair into a chic bob that framed her jawline. She stopped wearing the pastels Grant liked and started wearing structure, blazers, tailored trousers, colors like navy, charcoal, and blood red. She was sitting in the war room, Sterling's home office. "Are you sure about this?" Sterling asked. He was leaning against the mantelpiece, watching her. "Grant's stock is up 12% since he started this Sad Dad campaign," Talia said, reviewing her notes. "He's launching a new product line next week. Ellis Home, a security system to protect what matters most." He's monetizing our tragedy, Sterling. He's using the kidnapping narrative to sell home security. It's grotesque, Sterling agreed, but effective. The public loves a redemption arc. Which is why we're going to burn the arc down, Talia said. She stood up. She was wearing a crimson dress that looked like armor. The interview is in 1 hour, she said, with Oprah. It wasn't actually Oprah. She was retired from the daily grind, but it was the British equivalent. Sarah Jenkins, the toughest interviewer on the BBC. The interview was being simulcast to the US. They drove to the studio in silence. When they arrived, the security was tighter than a presidential visit. Talia sat in the chair across from Sarah Jenkins. The lights were blinding. 3, 2, 1, the floor manager counted down. Tonight, Sarah began, looking into the camera, we have the exclusive that the world has been waiting for. The woman at the center of the billionaire triangle. Talia Monroe breaks her silence. Sarah turned to Talia. Talia, your husband claims you were kidnapped. He claims you are suffering from postpartum psychosis. He says he loves you and just wants you home. What do you say to that? Talia looked directly into the camera lens. She imagined Grant watching from his penthouse, probably with a scotch in hand. I say that Grant Ellis is a very good storyteller, Talia said, her voice calm, low, and deadly. But he is a bad husband and a worse man. The studio audience gasped. Those are strong words, Sarah pressed. He says you are mentally unstable. I brought receipts, Talia said. She reached under her chair and pulled out a thick file. These are the forensic accounting records of Ellis Stream. They show that 3 months before I left, Grant began liquidating our assets and moving them to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Why would a loving husband hide $10 million from his pregnant wife? Sarah's eyes widened. You're alleging fraud? I'm alleging that Grant knew his company was failing, Talia continued, gaining momentum. He needed a bailout. He needed Sterling Voss's money, and he was willing to pimp out his family to get it. When I refused to play along, he decided to destroy me. And what about Sterling Voss? Sarah asked. What is your relationship with him? The world sees you living in his house, flying on his jet. Talia didn't flinch. Sterling Voss saved my life. Not because he wanted me, but because he is a decent human being, something Grant Ellis knows nothing about. Is he the father of your child? Sarah asked the forbidden question. Talia smiled. It was a cold smile. No, Grant is the father, which is why I am terrified, because I know what Grant does to things he owns. He breaks them. Talia leaned forward. Grant, I know you're watching. You want to sue me? Sue me. You want to play the victim? Go ahead. But I am not coming home. And neither is my son. If you want a fight, you'll get one. But I warn you, I'm not the girl you married anymore. I'm the woman who survived you. Cut to black. Back in the Kensington house, Sterling poured 2 glasses of whiskey. You were magnificent, he said, handing her a glass. Talia took it, her hands shaking slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. Do you think it worked? Sterling checked his phone. He laughed, a rare, genuine sound. Check Twitter, he said. Talia looked. The hashtag #YesIStandWithTalia was trending, #1 worldwide. Ellis Stream stock had dropped 8% in the last 20 minutes. We drew blood, Talia said. Yes, Sterling said, his face turning serious. But a wounded animal is the most dangerous kind. Grant won't sue you now, Talia. What will he do? He'll stop playing the victim, Sterling said, walking to the window and looking out into the dark London night. And he'll start playing the villain. He's going to come for Leo. Not legally. He's going to try to take him. Talia set her glass down. Let him try. I have the most powerful man in the world on my side, don't I? Sterling turned back to her. The look in his eyes was intense, scorching. You have everything I have, Talia. Everything. For the first time, the air between them didn't feel like friendship. It felt like fire. London's Victoria and Albert Museum was transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and gold for the Future of Light Gala. It was the social event of the season, hosted by Voss Industries. Talia Monroe stood on the mezzanine, looking down at the sea of masks. It had been 6 months since the interview that changed everything. In that time, she hadn't just survived. She had evolved. She was no longer the woman hiding in Sterling's library. She was the director of the Monroe Initiative, a non-profit funding legal aid for women in coercive marriages. She wore a gown of midnight blue velvet, a diamond mask covering her eyes. She felt powerful, but tonight she also felt a prickle of unease on the back of her neck. "You look like a queen surveying her kingdom," a voice murmured. Sterling appeared beside her, wearing a classic tuxedo and a simple black mask. He handed her a glass of sparkling water. "Leo is asleep. Marta just texted. He fought the nanny for 20 minutes, but the bedtime story won." Talia smiled, the tension easing slightly. "He's stubborn. Like his—" She paused. "Like his mother." "I was going to say, like his unofficial godfather." Sterling grinned. Their relationship had remained in a delicate, undefined space. They were partners, co-parents in practice, if not in name, and roommates in the Kensington fortress. Sterling had never pushed. He had waited, giving her space to heal from the trauma of Grant. "I have news," Sterling said, his tone shifting. "Nash called. There's movement on the New York accounts. Someone is liquidating what's left of Ellis Stream. Is it Grant? We don't know. But whoever it is, they are desperate. The SEC is circling." Suddenly, a commotion near the main entrance drew their attention. A man had pushed past security. He wasn't wearing a mask. He was wearing a suit that looked expensive but disheveled, his tie crooked, his eyes wild. It was Grant. The room went silent. The orchestra stopped playing. Talia gripped the railing. "How did he get in?" "He didn't," Sterling said, his voice turning to ice. "He broke in." Grant spotted them on the mezzanine. He pointed a shaking finger up at Talia. "There she is!" he shouted, his voice echoing off the marble statues. "The thief! The woman who stole my son!" Security guards were closing in, but Grant pulled something from his jacket pocket. The crowd screamed, thinking it was a weapon. It wasn't a gun. It was a thick envelope. "You think you've won, Talia?" Grant roared, stumbling toward the stairs. "You think Voss is your savior? Ask him about the Barcelona deal. Ask him what he did to my suppliers." Sterling didn't flinch. He stepped in front of Talia. "Stay here." "No," Talia said, stepping out from behind him. "I'm done hiding." She walked down the grand staircase, her heels clicking rhythmically on the stone. The crowd parted. Grant watched her come, his face a mixture of hate and twisted adoration. "You look expensive," Grant sneered as she stopped 3 steps above him. "Voss pays well." "I pay for myself now, Grant," Talia said calmly. "Go home. You're drunk and you're embarrassing yourself." "Home?" Grant laughed, a manic, broken sound. "I don't have a home. The bank took the penthouse this morning. Ellis Stream is gone. They froze everything. Because of you. Your little interview spooked the investors." "You defrauded the investors," Talia corrected. "I just turned on the lights." Grant's face crumbled. He lunged up the stairs, grabbing the hem of her dress. "You have to help me, T. Please. I'm looking at prison. If you issue a statement, if you say we're reconciling, the stock might stabilize. Just for a week. I can fix this. We can be a family again." Talia looked down at the man begging at her feet. She felt a profound sense of pity. Not love. Just pity for a creature so hollow he thought a press release could fix a broken soul. "Grant," she said softly, "we were never a family. We were a photo op." Grant's expression hardened. The pleading vanished, replaced by the rage she remembered from the Pierre Hotel. He scrambled to his feet, grabbing her arm. "You ungrateful beep." Before he could finish the word, Sterling was there. He didn't throw a punch. He simply gripped Grant's shoulder with a force that made Grant wince, spinning him around. "Let go of her," Sterling said. It wasn't a request. Grant swung wildly at Sterling. Sterling ducked effortlessly, and Grant's momentum carried him forward, crashing into a waiter carrying a tray of champagne. Glass shattered everywhere. Grant lay amidst the broken shards, panting, humiliated. "It's over, Grant," a new voice cut through the room. A woman stepped out from the shadows of the pillars. She was wearing a red dress, and she held a cell phone up, recording. It was Cassandra Price. Grant looked up from the floor, champagne soaking into the knees of his bespoke trousers. He wiped a smear of blood from his cheek, where a shard of crystal had grazed him. He squinted at the woman in red, his eyes trying to focus through the haze of alcohol and desperation. "Cassie?" he rasped, his voice small, unrecognizable from the booming tyrant who had stormed in moments ago. A flicker of hope lit his face, a pathetic, manipulative hope. "Cassie, thank God. Tell them I was set up. Tell them about the pressure I was under." Cassandra Price walked slowly into the center of the room. The 22-year-old influencer who had once posted selfies from Grant's yacht was gone. In her place was a woman who looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed with red, but her posture was rigid with resolve. She held a USB drive in her hand like it was a grenade. "Don't call me that," she said, her voice ringing clear in the silent museum. "And don't look at me like I'm your salvation. I'm your reckoning." Grant scrambled to his feet, slipping on the wet floor. "Babe, listen to me. I know you're upset about the accounts. I can explain. It was just temporary." "Stop!" Cassandra screamed, the sound tearing through his lies. "Stop lying, Grant. For once in your miserable life, just stop." She turned to Talia, who was standing on the stairs, Sterling's hand hovering protectively at the small of her back. Cassandra's expression softened as she looked at the woman she had helped betray. "He tried to make me sign an NDA yesterday," Cassandra said to the room, but her eyes were locked on Talia. "He locked me in his office for 3 hours. He told me that if I didn't sign the papers putting the Cayman accounts in my name, he would leak photos of me. He was going to frame me for the embezzlement, Talia. He was going to send me to prison while he flew off to non-extradition countries." The crowd gasped. The socialites and tycoons whispered behind their hands, the veneer of politeness shattered by the raw ugliness of the truth. "She's lying!" Grant shrieked, looking around wildly. "She's a gold digger! She's mentally unstable, just like my wife! They're conspiring against me!" Cassandra held up the USB drive. "I have the recordings, Grant. I recorded everything. The meeting with the bankers, the bribes to the custody judge." She took a shaky breath. "And the call to the mechanic at Teterboro." Sterling, who had been watching with cold detachment, suddenly went rigid. He stepped down the stairs, moving past Talia to stand toe-to-toe with Grant. "What call to Teterboro?" Sterling asked, his voice dangerously low. Cassandra's hand trembled. "The night Talia left, Grant didn't just chase the car. He made a call 20 minutes before you arrived. He offered a mechanic $50,000 to cut the hydraulic line on your Gulfstream's landing gear." Talia felt the blood drain from her face. She grabbed the railing to steady herself. The image of the jet lifting off, of her safe haven in the sky, suddenly turned into a nightmare of twisted metal and fire. "He wanted the plane to crash?" Talia whispered. "With me inside? With his son inside?" "He said," Cassandra choked back a sob. "He said if he couldn't have you, no one could. He said it would be a tragic accident, the grieving widower play." The horror in the room was palpable. This wasn't white-collar crime anymore. It was attempted murder. Grant was shaking his head frantically. No, that was just talk. I was venting. I never authorized it. It was just talk." "The mechanic didn't take the money, Grant," Cassandra said. "He took the recording to the FBI." As if summoned by the weight of the revelation, the heavy oak doors of the museum swung open. The flashing blue lights of police cruisers cut through the elegant lighting of the gala. 4 officers from Scotland Yard, flanked by 2 men in suits who bore the distinct, grim demeanor of American federal agents, marched into the hall. "Grant Ellis," one of the agents barked, his voice booming. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder." Grant backed away, knocking over a pedestal. A bust of a Roman emperor crashed to the floor, decapitated. "You can't touch me here," Grant yelled, his back hitting a marble pillar. "I'm an American citizen. I have rights. Voss, call this off. I'll give you the IP. I'll give you everything." Sterling looked at him with profound disgust. "I don't want your code, Grant. I want you gone." The officers swarmed him. Grant fought back, flailing and kicking, screaming obscenities that echoed off the high vaulted ceilings. He looked at Talia one last time as they cuffed his hands behind his back. "I made you!" he screamed, spittle flying from his lips. "You were a nobody from Ohio. I gave you this life. You'll fail without me. You hear me? You're nothing." Talia walked down the final steps until she was standing right in front of him. The police paused, allowing the moment. Talia leaned in, her voice calm, steady, and quiet enough that only Grant could hear. "I was never nothing, Grant," she said. "I was just waiting." She signaled to the officers. "Get him out of my sight." They dragged him away, his screams fading as the heavy doors slammed shut, sealing the toxicity out of the room. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the shock of the elite who had just watched one of their own be cannibalized by his own hubris. Cassandra remained standing in the center of the room, looking lost. Talia walked over to her. "I'm sorry," Cassandra whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know about the plane, I swear. When I heard the tape, I couldn't do it anymore." Talia looked at the young woman. She saw the manipulation, the fear, the grooming. She saw herself 3 years ago. "You did the right thing," Talia said. She reached into a clutch and pulled out a card, Nash Holden's card. "Call him. He represents me. But tonight, he represents the truth. He'll make sure you don't go down for Grant's crimes." Cassandra took the card, nodding mutely, and slipped away into the shadows. Sterling came to Talia's side. He didn't speak. He just took her hand, interlacing his fingers with hers. His grip was tight, betraying the terror he had felt at the mention of the plane. "Are you all right?" he asked. Talia looked at the shattered glass on the floor, then at the closed doors. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of expensive perfume and old stone. "I'm better than all right," she said. "I'm free." 1 year later. The rain in London was different from the rain in New York. In New York, it felt aggressive, a punishment. In London, it felt like a cleansing. Talia Monroe sat in her office in Shoreditch, listening to the rhythm of the drops against the industrial-sized windows. The sign on the frosted glass door read, "Monroe and Associates, Crisis Management and Legal Aid." She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was an architect. Across the desk sat a woman named Eleanor. Eleanor was wearing sunglasses indoors, shielding a bruising eye, clutching a designer bag as if it contained her entire life. "He says I won't make it on my own," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. "He says he controls all the accounts. He says I'm too old to start over." Talia leaned forward. She wasn't wearing the soft pastels of a trophy wife. She wore a sharp charcoal blazer, her hair cut in a sleek bob that signaled business. "Elena," Talia said, her voice firm but kind, "look at me." The woman lowered her sunglasses. "2 years ago, I had $12 and a husband who told the world I was crazy," Talia said. "Today, I run a firm that has extracted 40 women from situations exactly like yours. He controls the accounts. We freeze them. He says you're too old. We rebrand you. You are not a victim unless you agree to be one." She slid a folder across the desk. "This is your exit strategy. A car is waiting downstairs. A safe house is prepped. Do you want to go?" Eleanor looked at the folder, then at Talia. For the first time, a spark of defiance lit her eyes. "Yes." "Good," Talia smiled. "Go. Don't look back." As Eleanor left, Talia's phone buzzed on her desk. It was Nash Holden. "It's done," Nash's voice came through, clear and triumphant. Talia swiveled her chair to look out at the London skyline. "The verdict?" "Guilty on all counts," Nash said. The attempted sabotage of the aircraft was the nail in the coffin. The judge gave him the maximum. 15 years, federal prison, and full restitution. The remaining assets from Ellis Stream are being liquidated to pay back the investors and to pay your settlement. "I don't want his money, Nash." "It's not his money, Talia. It's the money you earned by surviving him. Put it in Leo's trust, or build more safe houses." 15 years, Talia exhaled. Leo would be a teenager by the time Grant breathed free air again. The shadow that had loomed over their lives was finally, officially gone. "Go home, Talia," Nash said gently. "Celebrate. You won." Talia hung up. She grabbed her trench coat and walked out of the office, waving to her team, a group of fierce, brilliant women she had handpicked. She didn't take a car. She decided to walk. She needed to feel the pavement under her boots. She walked past the coffee shops, the black cabs, the tourists. She walked until the noise of the city faded into the quiet elegance of Kensington. When she reached the heavy black door of the townhouse, she paused. This house had been a fortress, then a sanctuary. Now it was just home. She unlocked the door. The smell of garlic, butter, and something slightly burnt wafted down the hallway. "Daddy, no! The green one!" A toddler's voice shrieked with delight. Talia walked into the kitchen. It was a scene of domestic chaos. Flour was dusted over the granite island. Sterling Voss, the billionaire industrialist who moved markets with a whisper, was wearing an apron that said, "Kiss the chef." He was trying to wrestle a bowl of peas away from Leo, who was sitting in his high chair, looking like a mischievous cherub. Sterling looked up, his hair disheveled. He froze when he saw her. "You're home early," he said, wiping his hands on a towel. "The risotto isn't ready. It might be inedible. I may have burned the shallots." Talia dropped her bag on the floor. She walked over to him, ignoring the mess, ignoring the food. She stopped inches from him. "He got 15 years, she said softly. Sterling let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for a year. His shoulders dropped. The tension that lived in the corners of his eyes vanished. "It's over," he said. "It's over," Talia confirmed. She looked at Leo, who was happily smashing peas into the tray of his high chair. Then she looked back at Sterling. For a year they had danced around this. The gratitude, the friendship, the shared trauma. Sterling had been her knight, but she had refused to be a damsel. She needed to stand on her own 2 feet before she could stand beside him. Sterling, she said. Yes? I'm not broken anymore. Sterling's eyes searched hers. The grey in his irises warmed like the sky after a storm. I never thought you were broken, Talia. I just thought you were healing. I am healed, she whispered, and I'm tired of sleeping in the guest room. Sterling didn't hesitate this time. He reached out, cupping her face in his hands, hands that had built empires and cradled her son. He kissed her. It wasn't the desperate, adrenaline-fueled kiss of a rescue. It was a slow, deliberate claiming. It tasted of wine and promise. It was the collision of two people who had seen the darkness and chosen to build their own light. Talia wrapped her arms around his neck, deepening the kiss, feeling the solid beat of his heart against hers. "Ew!" Leo shouted from his high chair, throwing a pea at them. They broke apart, laughing. Sterling rested his forehead against hers, breathless. "I love you," he said. It was the first time he had said it aloud. "I love you too," Talia said, and the truth of it rang clearer than any bell. She picked up Leo, kissing his pea-covered cheek, and Sterling wrapped his arms around both of them. Talia looked out the kitchen window into the garden. The rain had stopped. The clouds were parting, revealing a sliver of moon. She had boarded a jet, thinking she was running away from her life. She realized now she had been running toward it. She was no longer the millionaire's wife or the victim on the news. She was Talia Monroe, and she was exactly where she was supposed to be. What a journey. From the shattered glass of the Pierre Hotel to the quiet strength of a new life in London. Talia didn't just survive Grant Ellis. She outgrew him. The story of Talia and Sterling reminds us that sometimes your life has to fall apart completely before you can build the one you actually deserve. Grant Ellis had billions, but he died a pauper in spirit. Talia left with nothing but her dignity, and she ended up with everything. If you loved this story of justice, romance, and revenge, please hit that like button. It helps us bring more drama to your screen. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a chapter. And tell me in the comments, do you think Cassandra deserved forgiveness for handing over the evidence? Or was it too little, too late? I want to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and remember, the best revenge isn't destruction, it's success.